Hello YouTube, how's it going? It's the Professional here. Today we are reviewing the B-11 Strikeforce, which was just released as part of the drip feed for the After Hours DLC. I'm sorry this review took me a little bit to make, I just had to test a lot of things about the aircraft. Now, on to the review. Now, the B-11 is based off the A-10 Warthog, which is a real-life military jet still in service. This thing is pretty expensive, with an asking price of $3,800,000. There is no trade price for this, which makes it unfortunate. They should have given you some kind of option, make 10 sales, 15 sales, something like that, and you get a discount, but unfortunately, there's no trade price. Its upgrades are not too expensive though, but you are going to be spending over $4 million in total. You have to store it in your hangar, and if you are like me, you are probably running out of room in your hangar on both the storage and the floor, if you own a lot of aircraft. This is the first aircraft in a very long time to have explosive cannons since the Rogue. It has an explosive minigun, which we will discuss later. It also carries homing missiles and barrage. Thankfully, you do not have to buy them separately, and you can use them both at the same time. It can also carry bombs, and in terms of handling for its size, it's extremely impressive. So here, let's do a speed test. The first thing I wanted to do when I bought this aircraft was do a speed test as soon as possible, because I was really curious if this jet was going to be faster than its competitors. And in this case right here, we are racing both a laser and the Hydra, and this jet, it has no chance against the laser and the Hydra in a speed test. Even propeller planes manage to pass this thing, and they go faster than this, making the B-11 one of the slowest jets in the game. It has a lot of weapons on it. We're going to talk about that later, but in terms of speed, it doesn't do too well. It loses in a race to almost every single weaponized plane/jet in the game that is of similar size. So it doesn't do too well in speed. Even in this second test right here, where I get a 2-second head start on both the laser and the Hydra, they managed to both easily catch up to me. So if you're in this kind of a jet, and you're trying to get away from somebody and they're in a laser or a Hydra or maybe some kind of other plane or jet with weapons on it, you're not going to be able to outrun them. Your best bet is to engage them. So if you're hoping to outrun people that are chasing you in this, if they're in a different kind of aircraft, chances are they're going to catch up to you, and very easily. Now, whenever a new air vehicle comes out that has weapons on it, the best way that I like to test it against ground targets is doing Headhunter, because Headhunter has 4 different targets around the city or the countryside, depending on where you started in, and it's a really good way to test how good aircraft are against armored vehicles and also against ground targets. And in this case, this clip is sped up. This is not the actual speed of the jet, but the reason that I sped up this clip is just so you guys could see how many runs it took me just to hit this one target right down here. The explosive cannon, the explosive minigun, I should say, it's not really that effective. I mean, it's certainly better than the kind of machine gun that you would find on like a Pyro or a Starling. It's explosive, that's great, but you have to be very precise with this thing, very accurate, and it doesn't even do that much damage. Like if you hit a player even with this thing, it's not going to kill them on the first attempt, unless you absolutely spam it at them. You would have to do a few runs on a target, and you guys saw just how many runs it took me to hit that target there. If you're very precise, you can also destroy armored vehicles. In this case, I hit that armored vehicle, I spammed the gun, and I blew him up, but this gun, it's very different from the kind of gun that you would have on a laser or a Hydra, because the laser and the Hydra, it fires so fast, you could literally spam it in so many different directions when you're going down and just hit the general area where the target is, and you blow them up. This thing, you need to be directly on point when you hit the target. After 5 minutes, I finally finished the Headhunter, and I locked onto the target right down here because I was having a hard time blowing him up with the explosive minigun on this thing. And some people might think that 5 minutes is good to complete Headhunter in, but I could have completed Headhunter in around 2 to 3 minutes if I was using a laser or a Hydra. So for an activity like Headhunter, a laser or a Hydra would be much more effective at hitting the ground targets. However, even though the minigun isn't great at hitting ground targets, it is great for dogfighting. This is where it excels at. And in this case, we're doing a test right here to see which aircraft could win in a dogfight situation. Laser versus the B-11. And my friend is trying to get up behind me. I managed to get up behind him actually pretty quickly. And fighting a laser, I have no trouble at all. No trouble at all getting up behind him. And I just fired this explosive cannon. And because it's explosive, it can literally tear any aircraft to shreds in a matter of shots. This helps out a lot instead of a lot of other aircraft that have the typical machine guns on them like the Pyro. Very good agility on this thing. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. A lot of people are thinking, if this aircraft is so agile and so good at dogfights, then how does it handle against an aircraft like the Pyro, which is currently the best dogfighter in the game? Well, in this test right here, my friend is flying a Pyro, and I managed to get up behind him, and we're both trying to kill each other. He's trying to kill me, and I'm trying to kill him. Once I got behind the Pyro, though, it was very hard for him to shake me. If I was in any other kind of jet, if I was in a laser or a Hydra, the Pyro would have shaken me by now, would have actually gotten up behind me and started hitting me. But because I was in this new jet that has such great agility, Pyro has a really hard time outrunning me. But the thing is, if the Pyro got behind me, the same thing would have most likely happened. But because I have an explosive cannon, it's actually a little more easier for me to shoot him down, because the Pyro, you need to be really on point. And this thing, just a few shots from an explosive cannon will take any aircraft down. But remember, the Pyro is faster than the B-11. Even though the B-11 has really good handling, almost the same as the Pyro, the B-11 is much slower than the Pyro. The Pyro is still the fastest jet in the game. Now, in terms of landing, this thing has no problem landing. I haven't really had any issues landing this thing, even in pretty tight places like streets. I've been able to land this thing, but just keep in mind, because this is a larger aircraft, it could actually get stuck on more places. The wings are actually wider, so just be careful where you land, but you shouldn't really have a problem landing this thing. I mean, I managed to land this thing on the roof of the parking lot here, so it manages to slow down pretty well, and it'll land anywhere. This right here is an example of what can happen when you land the aircraft in too much of a tight spot. Like right here, I overestimated and I thought that I could land the aircraft here, but I actually got it stuck on a lot of things. So just be careful where you land with this thing, because remember, the wings are wider. It doesn't have a problem landing, but just because of its size, it might make it more difficult landing in certain tight spots. If you are a really good pilot, you don't even really need flares. All you need to do is pretty much fly in a circle if somebody's locking onto you. My friend right here, he's spamming homing launchers at me, and because this jet has such great agility, what actually happens is the homing launcher, it flies in a completely different direction. It flies after the jet for the first few number of seconds, but then it flies in a different direction because the homing launcher can't curve at the same kind of angle that the jet curves at. So its agility helps it dodge missiles as well. Really good for that. Now, I wanted to show you guys something really strange about this aircraft, and a lot of other jets, they suffer from similar issues. You guys see me damaging engine number 1 right here on the left. I damaged that first engine on the left, and I'm flying, and after some time, the right engine starts smoking, which I don't really understand the logic in that. If I damage the left engine, why does the right engine start smoking after some time? And what's really strange about this plane is when one engine gives out, one engine completely dies, the plane starts flipping. Like, it starts flipping to the left or the right side, depending on which engine that you lost. In other aircraft, you'll lose one engine and eventually the other one will shut off too, but that aircraft, if you're still good, you can still maintain correct altitude. But this thing, the second that it loses one engine, it starts stalling to the side, and you gotta constantly keep rebalancing the stick, in my case for the controller, or a keyboard and a mouse if you're on PC. But you lose one engine, and this thing is gonna keep flipping to the side. And when you finally lose both engines, this thing just nosedives down. It's pretty much impossible to land this thing unless you're really close to the ground when the engine gives out. Other aircraft can glide. This thing will just nosedive down when both engines are lost. In regards to the explosive minigun, there's one more thing that a lot of people didn't notice. The explosive minigun apparently has better range than the explosive cannons on the laser and the Hydra. You guys see right there, one of my friends is in a laser, the other one is in a B-11. I'm in a Hydra, I'm going to hover right over here, and this is a little difficult to see right here. It's a little difficult to see, but both of them are firing. And as you guys can see down here, the B-11, it has a little bit better range than the lasers cannons. It goes a little bit further, a few meters further. So the B-11, its minigun, its explosive rounds actually go a little bit farther than the Hydras and the lasers cannons. And in a dogfight situation, this can really help, especially when you're trying to catch up. When you're trying to catch up to another jet and you're going around in a circle like we were doing earlier, this can really make the difference. So the B-11, from what I've seen right here, the explosive cannon on it has longer range than the Hydra and the lasers cannons. I have to warn you guys though, there is something really disappointing about this aircraft. Even though it has homing missiles that have no cooldown, they are limited. And that's right, they are limited. These homing missiles, you can fire up to 30. And when you fire 30 missiles, that's it. No more. They're gone. The only way to get more would be in a hangar. I have never seen an aircraft have limited homing missiles. This is the first time I've seen it. Even if you look under the aircraft, it has no more homing missiles. 30, and that's it. Pretty disappointing for the missiles. Now, how do all the individual weapons do against a single target on the ground? My friend right here is on the beach. You guys see him right there. And I'm firing the explosive minigun. And it took me 3 runs to kill him. 3 runs. And if you guys look closely, when I hit him with the explosive cannon, he actually got knocked back. He didn't die on impact. So the guns on this thing, like I said earlier, are much weaker than the guns in the laser or the Hydra. Not only are they slower, but they're much weaker. The barrage has problems hitting even a single target standing still as well. It fires multiple missiles really fast, but it's not exactly completely accurate. Like you guys are seeing, I'm firing in the general direction where my friend is down there, and I don't manage to hit him. I finally hit him on the 4th run, but the thing is though, if you hit somebody directly with the barrage, they'll die instantly, versus the explosive cannon where you gotta keep hitting them over and over again. Here, finally at the end, we have a damage resistance test, and this aircraft takes a total of 5 explosive rounds. And, you know, this is kind of misleading though, because a lot of people assume that this aircraft is very armored, but it's a little more complicated than that. In terms of homing launchers, I managed to fire 6 homing launchers before the thing exploded. So 4th one here, 5th one, 6th one that exploded. Now, what I meant earlier was, even though the thing can technically take 5 explosive rounds before it explodes, it's more complicated, because if you were up in the air, a lot of people didn't test what happens in the air when you get hit. They only tested what happens on the ground. If you are in the air and you get hit by 1 explosive round, say right here it takes out your wing. If you get hit in the wing with the explosive round, it can blow part of your wing off, and then the thing is harder to control. So if you're getting attacked by one of these things and you have an explosive sniper out, aim for the wing, because it's going to make it really hard for the pilot to control. It's really hard for me to turn now because he blew off part of my wing. When the jet gets hit by explosive sniper shot number 2, the engine starts smoking and they eventually die out. But when it gets hit by shot number 3, the jet pretty much is disabled and it's useless at this point. When it gets hit by its 3rd explosive shot in the air, the jet is going to start spinning out of control, and it's going to be beyond control. Right now, I am not doing this. I was not flying the plane like this. When it gets hit by shot number 3, it starts spinning out of control. It'll go in random directions until eventually it'll crash. The plane is useless at this point. The pilot can still eject and can still save himself, but in reality, this jet, it can only take 3 shots. And then after the 3rd shot, the jet is disabled. And right here, I have a second test for you guys, just to show you guys the exact same thing happens. It only takes 3 shots before it starts spinning out of control. So, first shot right there, it didn't hit the wing that time, it hit the engine. So, jet's still going, still fine. But when shot number 2 comes up right here, the engines are going to be smoking. The engines are going to eventually die. Eventually, the engines will die and this thing will crash, but for some time, we can still use it. Now, when it gets hit with shot number 3, all the engines give out, the thing starts spinning out of control, and it becomes useless at this point. So, when people tell you that this thing can take 5 shots, they're not necessarily telling you the truth. It can take 5 shots before it explodes, but it can only take 3 shots before it becomes disabled. And here at the end, we come to our pros and our cons. And with pros, it has an explosive minigun. That's definitely a plus. This is the first explosive gun on a vehicle that I've seen in a very long time since the Rogue, so that's definitely a plus. Not the greatest explosive gun, but it is explosive. They could have given us the same kind of machine guns that we have in the Pyro and the Starling. They didn't, though. They gave us an explosive minigun, which is definitely a plus. It's the best dogfighter in the game. This thing is amazing at dogfighting. It's my personal opinion that it's the best dogfighter. Some people will disagree with me. Some people will say the Starling and the Pyro, but this is just my personal opinion. I feel that it's the best dogfighter in the game because it has such great agility and it has an explosive cannon. Now you mix the two, explosive cannon and great agility, the second that this thing gets behind any other aircraft, that aircraft is pretty much destroyed. It's very weaponized. It has homing missiles. It has bombs it can drop. It has barrage missiles and has an explosive minigun. So it's definitely really weaponized. A lot of weapons, but the homing missiles are limited. It has good armor. It has better armor than the laser and the Hydra for sure. Theoretically, it could take 5 shots, like I showed you guys earlier, from the explosive sniper, and can take a lot of homing missiles as well before it explodes. But in reality, when that thing is up in the air, it can only take 3 shots, and then it will become disabled. It's still better than the 2 shots for the laser and the Hydra. And on the 3rd shot, even when it gets disabled, the pilot can still save himself by jumping out. Its cannon has good range, so the explosive cannon has a little bit longer range than the cannon on the lasers and the Hydras, which can really be a game changer, especially in dogfights. It's great at landings. I have had no problems landing this thing. Very easily can land anywhere. Just watch out where you land because the wings are a little wider on this one than on other jets and planes, so just be careful where you land. In certain tight places you can crash it. Now here we come to the cons. It's very expensive. You're going to be spending over $4 million on this thing. That's with the upgrades. So it's pretty expensive. You know, I wish there should have been some kind of discount on this thing. It's a great jet. I don't necessarily know if it's worth $4 million. I would have priced it at around $3 million. I think that would have been a reasonable price, but there should have been some kind of trade price for this. Since the nightclub DLC came out not too long ago, it should have been like, oh, make 15 sales or 20 sales or something like that, and you get like $1 million off. That should have been in the game, but it wasn't, unfortunately. There's no trade price on it. Another con is it's very slow, and in comparison to the Hydra and the laser, they will absolutely smoke this thing in a race. So if you're trying to outrun those jets, they could catch up to you pretty quickly. If it's like a race around like turning, if you're like turning trying to get up behind another jet, you get up behind another jet no problem. But in terms of just overall speed, other aircraft will catch up to this. Even some propeller planes will catch up to it. So I was really disappointed in its speed. It has limited homing missiles. I think that's personally the stupidest thing about this jet. I don't know why this thing has limited homing missiles. I'm guessing that maybe Rockstar put that in to try to balance out the jet in a way, but I don't think it really balances out the jet. I don't think it should have limited homing missiles. And another one is the minigun. It's not the greatest. Even though the minigun is a pro because it's explosive, they might not have given us an explosive cannon. They could have easily given us some kind of machine gun. The minigun, it's really ineffective at shooting at specific targets on the ground. Like individual targets, like people on the ground, it's not good at. Like certain armored vehicles, you could hit them, but you have to be very precise. It could have been better, but at the same time if they gave this thing the same kind of explosive cannon that the laser and the Hydra has, it could have been really overpowered. So just think about it that way. This jet could be really agile, and it could have a really fast cannon. So it might be actually a good thing that the cannon isn't that strong. And last but not least, it stalls easily. If you actually damage out the engine on this thing and you're flying up in the air, if you lose engine number 1, it starts stalling. And then when you lose the third engine, it'll just nosedive down. Other aircraft, you could glide them in, but this thing you can't glide. It'll just straight up nosedive down. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this review. I'm sorry that this review took me all day to make. I just had a lot of testing to do on this aircraft. I'm sorry that this video is also longer. This video is longer than my typical videos. I do greatly apologize for that, but I just had a lot of material to cover with this new jet. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy my review, drop a like. If you're new to my channel and you enjoyed my content and subscribe to me, let me know what you think of this new jet. Do you like it? Do you think it's worth the price? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.